Hey, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. I've been on a little bit of a cartoon animation kick lately. Somewhat because some of these series that I'm reviewing didn't last very long, which means it's kind of easy to get through all the episodes to do a review. But I think in most of these cases, these are cartoons that probably should have done better than they did. And that always strikes me. I'll start watching a cartoon like today's topic, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and say, okay, 13 episodes. Maybe it wasn't that good. Maybe I'm going to start watching this thing and I'm going to pretty quickly see, oh yeah, I can see why this didn't really last. It's, when you start watching and you go, this is actually pretty darn good, that gets you thinking. So let's talk about Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Now, it got its start as Xenozoic Tales, a comic book, part of the indie alternative sort of scene, 1986 by Mark Schultz. Did very well, won several awards, and ultimately did well enough that it got turned into a cartoon. And, a few other things. I mean, it for a 13 episode cartoon and for, I believe, 14 issues of the comic book originally, it's an IP that did extremely well for itself. But again, not as well as it probably should have done. So how does Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, how does this indie comic get turned into a cartoon on CBS Saturday mornings? I mean, there's the big leagues of cartoons, or at least it was back in the day, back in, what was it, 94, or 93, 94, when this was on. Well, it's a really stunning comic book. It beautifully illustrated. It's this sort of post-apocalyptic setting. There are dinosaurs. There are, in fact, Cadillacs. There are some engaging characters. Not hard to see why this did really well as an indie book. It had a lot to offer, and it's a book I'd like to get into. But more importantly, another indie comic book had recently been turned into a cartoon, and it became one of the biggest IPs ever. And that was, of course, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Starts off Eastman and Laird as this sort of parody, satire, maybe, or at least inspired by Daredevil, the bleaker Frank Miller Daredevil stories about these mutant turtles. And I mean, it goes absolutely nuts. I can remember my mom, who was a kindergarten teacher, just, I won't say hated the cartoon, but it's like as soon as it showed up, every recess, she's got to tell kindergartners to stop kicking each other because they want to imitate the turtles. It was huge. Sold tons of toys, tons of merchandise. So folks were out on the lookout for indie alternative comic books that they could turn into the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I mean, they're leaving no stone unturned. And you got to think too, at that point, Marvel has Marvel Productions. Warner Brothers, I think, already owns DC. Can't really get a hold of those things. And an indie comic book, probably a little cheaper to get the rights to because it's, not as massive a success at this point, but very creative and a lot you could do with. And so in those days, even Fish Police managed to get itself a cartoon. It was kind of the thing at the time. So CBS brings us Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. It's about two main characters, Jack Tinrek and Hannah Dundee. And these are the characters you're going to see the most of. Now, Jack Tinrek is what's called an old blood mechanic. So the story is set 600 years after a catastrophe. And that catastrophe took place in the future from 1993, which means it could have been in the past for us. And at least in the cartoon, you don't know exactly what caused it, but they kind of hint that it was an ecological thing. So human beings go underground for about 600 years and emerge into this world that is filled with dinosaurs and other extinct mammals. And the old blood mechanics, they have a memory of the old technology. And in his case, part of that is cars. And he has these 50s Cadillacs that he's modified to work on like dinosaur droppings, the methane, I think. So they're slightly modified Cadillacs, but he drives around the wilderness in them, which of course, only works in comics and cartoons. Those really weren't cars that were built for going off-road. Wonderfully flat surfaces in the post-apocalyptic future, which really helps. So he's sort of not just a mechanical guy, not just a survivalist, but he's also in tune with the balance. The balance was disrupted in the past. You need to maintain the balance between human beings and nature. And that's part of what he does. That's part of what he's about. And it's definitely a theme in the cartoon in terms of the source of the adventures. Now, Hannah Dundee is an emissary from the city of Wassoon, okay, to the city in the sea. City in the sea, more or less where Jack has his base. His garage is a little outside the city. City in the sea is essentially the remnants of Manhattan that has been sort of sunk in the water. So it's almost like a Venice kind of thing now. Wassoon, Washington, D.C. So Hannah comes as an emissary to the city in the sea. She hooks up with Jack Tinrek and his crew and has various adventures. She's on his side to oppose some of the more corrupt politics that exist in the city in the sea. And besides them, he has a small crew of people. Mustafa Cairo, you can see there in the back seat, is sort of his main assistant. There's a guy named Kurgo, who's like a ferryman in the city in the sea, who's one of his allies. And he also has a pet dinosaur, an Allosaurus, which they call a cutter, named Hermes, who he kind of raised from a hatchling, sort of the guard dog for his garage, right? You need like a German Shepherd or a pit bull. He's got a baby, not a baby Allosaurus, but a juvenile Allosaurus guarding things. You can already see this is actually a really cool concept, and it's popping up just around the time that Jurassic Park is setting off the 90s dinosaur craze. So you kind of see why the folks who brought it to TV thought, man, this is probably going to work really well. And it's a great adventure cartoon. Not heavy on violence, although there is some of that. But you got dinosaur stampedes and various issues with these giant beasts. You have, but also not just like fighting. They're not really fighting dinosaurs at all. I mean, they're trying to preserve them, and just sometimes dinosaurs aren't that easy to work with. This is a scene where Hannah had a big Apatosaurus or Brontosaurus who was sick, who was causing a lot of problems. She mashes up some leaves, and that kind of relieves his trouble, and so he leaves him in peace. So there is that issue, there is that aspect of it, a kind of an ecological thing. But you also got these gangs, these folks who go out there and hunt the dinosaurs and would gladly hunt them back to extinction if they could. Chief among these is Hammer Terhune and his brothers. They cause a whole lot of problems, these poachers. And they oftentimes work unofficially with a lady named Wilhelmina Scharnhorst. Now, she is one of the governors of the city in the sea. She is greedy. She is corrupt, wants to develop, doesn't really care about nature, etc. Although I will admit, I mean, you're in this post-apocalyptic, a setting. Life is really hard. I kind of can understand why she's trying to do things to make life better for people in the city and the sea. But, that's not really the message they're going for. And she will tend to go too far. She's very bullheaded. She's a problem. And she's very often the source of issues for Jack Tinrick and for Hannah. So, like, what's the deal with why this thing only got 13 episodes? The voice work is good. Jack Tinrick could have maybe had a little more energy in his voice. Hannah Dundee, voiced by Susan Roman, great voice work there. Good voice work all around. It really was. The animation is good. It stands with anything that was being made at the time. Very solid. Episode 11 in particular, I'm almost wondering if episode 11 wasn't the initial bit of the test for the show, because it was particularly good. Looked like it had a higher frame rate. Almost had a little bit of a Miyazaki feel to the way characters moved and talked. Particularly good. In fact, if you were only going to watch one episode, I would suggest watch episode 11. I'd really say watch all of them. There's only 13 of them. It doesn't take that long. So you got good voice work, good animation, good direction, good story. I mean, they're engaging stories, good action adventure stuff kids would definitely dig. You got cool cars. You got dinosaurs, right? The main characters are good. There's a little bit of flirtation between them. Not a lot, but 13 episodes, they might have gone further with that. They're engaging. They're cool. No problem there. I mean, these are good characters. This is a solid show. And they got a toy line. And they got a video game. I mean, why is this not a major IP? And if you'll permit me, Hannah Dundee is one of the cartoon babes of the 90s. I mean, millennial guys wax poetic about April O'Neil and Rogue. And Hannah Dundee is like, she's a definite babe, and she's extremely cool. So what killed this show? All about the timing, and we've talked about this before in Dad's Den. So, pretty good lead-ins for the show. It was going up against, I want to say ABC was doing their sort of like teen comedy stuff, but they had like Saved by the Bell, the next class, or whatever they called it. So not like the classic Saved by the Bell. NBC, I don't remember what they had on it. It was fine, but it was nothing major. Fox is what killed Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. If Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had taken over the championship of cartoons and toys from Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers took it over from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was huge. Everybody knows it was huge. It was the biggest thing in the world. It gave kindergartners a reason to continue kicking each other when they had given up on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it was up opposite of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. And I don't know, maybe the network said, this is our best shot at getting, at beating Power Rangers. Or maybe they thought, let's just sacrifice this poor show. I don't know which. This is probably the reason that a lot more people haven't heard of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and the reason it only got 13 episodes, only a half season. And it's really too bad, because it's a really good, solid cartoon. Highly suggest you go out and find it. It's streaming on Tubi right now. Can probably be found out there in other formats. Good enough that it definitely has me wanting to go find the comic book series and read that and see how they differ and just give it a shot, because very engaging setting, great characters, solid animation, good voice work. No reason this thing shouldn't have been a bigger hit, except it just got buried by a giant Megazord. And that was that. So, hey, do you remember this cartoon? Were you a big fan? You a fan of the comic book? Love to hear about it in the comments. And if you have any other questions about it, or any other comments. Maybe you watched it as a kid and didn't like it. Awesome. I'd love to hear about that too. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, maybe share with a friend. That always helps me out quite a bit. Until the next video, God bless everybody. Be kind to one another. Have fun. Go watch Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, a very cool cartoon from the 90s. And I'll see you next time on Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.